Okay, everybody, we are back. We are here. It's time to talk about the Byzantines Part 2, getting to the rise and the height of the Byzantines. And the height of the Byzantines will really arrive under the great Emperor Justinian the First, the guy on the left who evidently wore a lot of earrings. Interestingly enough, he only has one more earring in than me, but we can talk about that later. So Justinian's dad was a man by the name of Justin, and Justin was able to rise through the ranks of the Byzantine army to eventually becoming the Emperor of the East himself, which by that point was already being called Byzantium. He ruled from 527 to 565, so he ruled for quite a long time. And early on, he had no problems mixing it up. His wife on the right there, Theodora, who seems to have less earrings than him. Remember, Constantine said we're wearing lots of awesome stuff. Um, Very scandalous. She was a courtesan, which was a combination of like a entertainer slash prostitute slash actress, but what was really the biggest thing was that she was a commoner, but he didn't care, and it turns out he's lucky for that. Theodora, we have quite a bit of writing about her. She was very capable, probably could have been the empress herself, and really would help him rule. Now, the biggest challenge to his power came in one of the most bizarre things in history, the Nika riots. Early on in his reign, Justinian was very unpopular. Um, you had the taxes weren't real good. A lot of people were kind of unhappy with them. He had actually reestablished the Senate, which probably was a bad decision, and they were trying to get rid of him. It was really, really crazy. And then it all came down to a chariot race. On the right, you see a picture of the Hippodrome, which probably seated 150 to 250,000 people. On the left is a main drag over here down the city of Istanbul, because you can see Hagia Sophia over there. And these two obelisks were actually part of the Hippodrome. So we think the Hippodrome lasted this entire area. It's now just a street. Well, there were two really popular chariot teams, the Blues and the Greens, and it was getting really kind of intense, and people were crashing into each other. And then people started complaining, but then other people started to blame everything on the emperor. I'm not even kidding. We have lots of sources that talk about this. And what ends up happening is a massive riot breaks out. They start calling to kill the king, and they're like ripping apart the city. Justinian on that point looks like he's maybe going to try to skip town and run away, and then his reign could have ended. However, it was the Empress Theodora that said that she wasn't going anywhere, that he needed to take care of this and fix it. So, what ends up happening is that in the time that he was trying to sneak away, the Senate was getting ready to declare, and some say they did declare a new emperor. Well, Justinian was pretty smart. What he did is he called the leader of some of the Blues, who were one of these major teams that also was one of the major leaders for the rebellion, and they basically cut a side deal with them that they would basically come on his side. What he then got them to do, them being the Greens or the other rioters, to come back to the Hippodrome where he promised to listen to them and that he would help them out and maybe try to end some of these problems. So 100,000 plus people show up. What he does is he sends in his General Belisarius, who's like the greatest general ever, and pretty much annihilates and kills 100,000 of them, and that is that. Now, the most important thing for Justinian is law, and I found this online and it's pretty much perfect. In 528, he established a series of judicial commissions to review, reform, and publish the essence of the old Roman law. The emperor also had a collection of legal opinions, published, a general law textbook developed, and a compilation of all his ordinances established. The Corpus Juris Civilis was a major contribution to Western civilization, and it became the foundation of most subsequent European legal systems, including the Napoleonic Code. Basically, what we have here, guys, is the concept of a general law code, the idea that laws should be periodically reviewed and changed, that judges, or it was the job of legal lawyers to enforce these laws, and really a lot of those old ideas of the innocent until proven guilty and uh, dealing with your accuser before the law, all of that kind of became codified, and that was the key thing with him. He also massively expands the empire. In 527, he had the areas in purple. By 565, he actually takes, Vandals, gone. Ostrogoths, gone. He takes some area from the Visigoths. He was actually getting to move over here and take some areas of the Franks, and it is going incredible. And Justinian is like, I am going to re-establish the Roman Empire. Forget the whole Byzantine thing. We are going to do it. And then, oh my God, here come all of these other barbarians, and it's all, no, it's just disease. It's just disease. One of the outbreaks of the plague, it was just awful. And disease is way worse than nomads, guys, because disease always kills more people than everyone else. We think that disease, if we look down here, started down here in modern day Ethiopia, and actually a little bit south of that in Kenya, Tanzania, worked its way around Ethiopia, came up through the Red Sea, and then just started slamming the cities. Because that's where the Byzantine Empire was actually in trouble, because it had so many cities and so many people together. It was said at one point in Constantinople, 5,000 people were dying per day, and that 40% of the population of Constantinople actually died. In the end, one quarter, 25 million people are killed. The empire is weakened, and they basically, if we pop back up a couple slides, they will withdraw back to the purple part over here. It was just too much to handle. And so when we look at Justinian, we give him the credit for the Corpus Juris Civilis, of putting down that crazy riot, of establishing the Byzantines, and we're going to be talking about their trade and other things like that. But in the end, it was the disease that brought it all down. Now, the next great ruler ruled about 500 years later, Basil II. At one point, basically, the emperors stopped being descended from the Romans, and they actually all ended up being Greeks or Macedonians. He ruled from 976 to 1025 and expanded the empire quite a bit. But he did that at the cost of other people. His other nickname was Basil the Bulgar Slayer, and he was a Byzantine emperor, and his main competition was the Bulgars that he was actually able to defeat, again from modern day Bulgaria. The big battle, the Battle of Kledon, that's in your notes, you should definitely know that. And it really gives them the focus of power on Eastern Europe, and that's really going to be where they're strong, the Balkans, modern day Serbia, Slovenia, things like that. But in order to send a message, it was said that he captured 15,000 Bulgarians and blinded 99 out of every 100 men. And then the men he didn't blind, he actually only poked out one eye so they could walk back, in which many of them died. That is intense. And as you can see here, when he took power, okay, it's just kind of this light green here. Okay, he's going to take all of this area, even in a little bit into Italy, and then right after his death, his successors are able to take the dark, dark green areas. So the empire had shrunk slowly but surely after Justinian. It gets smaller and smaller, but then Basil is able to expand it. Unfortunately, what you have for Byzantium was a slow decline. Now, they're going to have lots of influence. We'll talk about that in the next film. The first were the Arabs. The Arabs hit in the year 700 and basically take over the Middle East as well as all of North Africa. Then the Normans come in around the year 1000, and they take all their holdings in Sicily and southern Italy. And then you've got the Seljuk Turks, who will take over after the Arabs, completely annihilating them at the Battle of Manzikert, which annihilates their navy. And then you have the Republic of Venice that grows in the 1200s, that actually gets the Fourth Crusade to attack Christian Byzantium instead of attacking the Arabs. And then it all comes to an end in the year 1453. You can see at the height of Justinian in the red, okay, and then after the plague, they lose all this, and then by 1360, they're down to this, and then then they're just down to this little red. And in 1453, the Ottoman Turks, who we'll talk about later, under their great leader Mehmed II, are finally able to conquer the Byzantines. But as the successors of Rome, they lasted until 1453. So if we want to be kind of sticklers about it, Rome went from about the year 800 BCE to 1453, around a 2200-year run. Not so bad. All right, so let's get your questions and your comments, and I will see you guys tomorrow.